One. Hi, guys, and welcome. Hi, Becky. Thank you for joining me.
Hi there. I think it's good morning for you. For me. Good morning. Good afternoon for you.
That's right. Yeah, it's 1:30 in the afternoon for me. What time is it
there? Well, using your words, it's 6:30.
Awesome. So guys, if you're joining us live, it's really great to have you. We're here to talk today about the hyoid process and really that relationship to movement in the rest of the body and understanding our role as rehab therapists in how we can evaluate and work with the structure. So we'd love to invite you guys to engage with us. We're here on Facebook for that reason. If you have any questions or comments or you want to share your experiences, this is where we do that. So please feel free to comment, ask questions at any time throughout this chat. Becky's prepared a presentation for us, and she's going to be sharing some slides and some really great images and information in that format. But we're still live. We're still here with you. So feel free to ask questions at any point. All right. So with that, I am going to hide this and bring up Becky's slides. Okay, and ask Becky to introduce herself and introduce the topic.
Okay, well, thank you so much. My name is Becky Tenges, and I just appreciate that you would all respect the content. It's mine. So I have been around horses for over 45 years. My journey to body work and learning about anatomy and wellness began with this guy, Prince Ivan, several years ago. My journey started with becoming a Masterson Method practitioner, and then I have gone on to do just short of everything there is to do through Jim. Lots of roles I play with him. My interest in learning just was piqued, and so I have been on a nonstop breakneck education campaign, and these are some of the things I've done, and I have been so blessed to learn from many people, giants in their industry, in both the horse world and the human world. When I couldn't find knowledge about something I wanted, particularly fascia, most of these guys are fascia folks. I jumped over to the human world to get the knowledge I was looking for. I have an education business that I'm also developing and looking forward to just helping people know more so that they can help more. So
before you jump in to that, I just want to say another quick welcome to everyone. We've already had some comments. Good afternoon. Hi, Emily. Hi, Kathy. It's so great to have another South African online with us. That's so amazing. And Kathy also says she already loves everything that you teach, Becky. So that's really great.
Thank you so much. I have to, I don't know if she's out there today, but I believe Martina Neidhart introduced you to us.
Yes.
To me. So if you're out there, Martina, now or in the recording, thank you.
I'm also going to be chatting to Martina next week. So she's going to be live with me next week. So that's really exciting. She and I have been in touch for a long time. So I'm very excited to actually meet her in person, online. Guys, for those that have joined us live since we've started, it's really great to have you. I want to remind you that we're here to interact with you guys, answer questions and chat. So please feel free to comment or ask questions or share your knowledge and experience. We're all here to learn throughout this presentation, throughout this discussion, and we would love to hear from you. All right, Becky, back to you.
Okay. So I first learned about the Hyoid Apparatus from Dr. Carrie Ridgway. I'm tearing up. He was a giant of a man, and before his time on so many topics, and the Hyoid Apparatus was one of them. And I went to what I believe was his last 4-day integrative veterinary medicine seminar, and was blown away by him as an individual, but what he knew and what he shared. And I'm honored to be able to continue to help people know about the Hyoid apparatus. Sorry, I'm so teary.
No, that's okay. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to just to think about and honor those that have brought so much knowledge to us and have changed our thinking, right? And the way that we've looked at the world. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a tiny little structure, but it, in my perspective, kind of is the center of the universe in the horse. And so I'm going to breeze through where it is, what it is, anatomy and attributes, functional anatomy and biomechanics, what it connects with, well, some of what it connects with, possible signs of imbalance and restriction, some causes and contributors to hyoid dysfunction, just two of several safe methods to assess whether there's a hyoid imbalance, and then just a couple of what are many ways that you can safely release tension. And then we can have Q&As. I can pause throughout and then just talk about some other opportunities to learn more. So where it is, hopefully you can see this image. There's the left mandible of this horse skull has been cut away. And so you can see that it is suspended from the skull. And can you see my pointer when I'm?
No, I can't see your pointer.
So I don't need to bother pointing. It's suspended from the skull, and it's suspended just underneath the temporal bone. And it interacts with the skull at the temporal hyoid joint, which is right at the bottom of the ear canal. And then it also attaches via a muscle to the pericondylar process. The process, if you don't know bone language, is a pokey outy thing. So just underneath the pole, that pokey outy, pokey downy piece of bone is the pericondylar process. And it really hangs like a swing, and it actually articulates at that temporal hyoid joint. And so it swings, and it's super closely associated with the TMJ because that ear canal bone, with a fancy little name, but anyway, it's an ear canal bone, resides. So if this is the temporal bone, here, I'll close my bottle. The ear canal hole sort of resides resides up into it, kind of resides like that. It sort of resides up into that temporal bone. So we can't think about the hyoid apparatus without also thinking about the temporal bone. So here's I'm using my pointer that you can't see. The left image, you can see I've got a circle, and what is that, an oval, around the temporal mandibular joint. So it's a split screen. On the left is kind of an oblique angle from the back, and on the right is directly in the back. And so I've got arrows at the temporal bone, the TMJ, and then below the mandible. And you can see I've got, on the left image, I've got a little arrow pointing at that ear canal hole. And so obviously the ear would come right up from that. And you can see on on both images, I stuck my pretend hyoid in with the purple. So you can kind of see where it lives from both that back oblique angle and the straight forward angle. This is a actual picture of, it was a tiny little thing. You can see in the middle image the size of the hands compared to the size of the mandible. It's a tiny little thing. So that image on the left of the hyoid apparatus, which is wired together because it would fall apart in that image, is being held in the middle image. And then the right image is not the same critter, but it's from underneath. So you can see the yellow arrows are pointing at the hyoid, at only part of the hyoid apparatus. And then you can see where the cervical 1, 2, and 3 are, just so we can orient ourselves for if we were standing underneath and looking up where it hangs out. Literally hangs out. So The hyoid, sometimes I see written or heard, someone will say the hyoid bone. It's not a single bone. It's 9 bones. And the top 4 are paired bones. And so there's a little teeny tiny, you can see the arrows at the top, the little teeny tiny ones, the tympanohyoid. Tympano just means that there's a relationship to the eardrum. Then that long sort of handle, spatula handle, the stylohyoid, there's 2 of those. And then there's another set of teeny tiny little marbly bones, the epihyoid at the bottom of the stylohyoid that rest atop the ceratohyoid. And then the ceratohyoid sits into, now that bottom part, and maybe when someone talks about the hyoid bone, that's the thing they're talking about, because I don't know at what age those would fuse together, but there's 3 different zones of that bottom part, that single bone. And the forward piece is the lingual process, lingual meaning bone process. Remember our projection or pokey outy things. And then the basihyoid is that horizontal piece. And then the 2 coming back are the thyrohyoid bones. And that thyroid is a prefix for thyroid. There's actually 6 joints, and they're synovial joints. So way up at the top, those tympanohyoids, and then at the intersection of the stylohyoid and the ceratohyoid, that epihyoid, that joint right there. And then the location where the ceratohyoid connects to and interacts with the thyrohyoid and the basihyoid, sort of in that zone right there. So there's 6 of them. And because there are those joints, that's how we can kind of think about it like a swing. So you could imagine, it's kind of a weird looking swing, but one could sit at the basihyoid with their little knees on either side of the lingual process. And now you're sitting on a swing, and it would articulate between underneath the temporohyoid, the temporal bone, and the ear canal. And then obviously the nostrils are in the direction of that lingual process. And so it really is a swinging thing.
Great. I'm going to pause you there for one moment. So just want to say hi to everyone who's joined us. Again, Julie, it's great to have you from Canada. That's amazing. And if there are any questions at any point, guys, jump in and ask them. I'm going to ask my own one now. So Becky, if we look at this, if we think of this, okay, nine bones, yes. But we usually think of it as one structure, right? Yep. However, it's articulating. So yep. Is it incorrect, really, for us to think about it as one unit? How much motion is happening between, at those joints within the structure?
So it is incorrect to think of it as a single bone because it's not. It is definitely a single structure. And when we have tiny little articulation points, so our perspective about, you said, how much does it move? Massively. I'll show you, but on a tiny little scale. So I've got another slide coming up where we can review the job of the hyoid apparatus. But there's a lot of movement there, and there are many muscles. There's many short little ones. There's like 9, I think it's 9, could be 11 short paired muscles, and then there's a bunch of long muscles. And so the attachments enable it to move without flailing about. We wouldn't want flailing, but there is movement, both because of what attaches to it, the tongue being a big one, and because of the jobs that it enables other structures to do.
Okay, so it's not only moving at that tympanohyoid point.
Correct.
Also going to move at the epihyoid points.
Yep.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah. And
I'll get more interesting here. Amy, it's great to have you join us. Hi. All right.
So speaking of movement, this slide talks about the attributes. So it's super complex, but it's a really elegant system of tiny little bones and joints. And it's delicate but durable. And this multi-bone design provides swing forward, up, and back at the temporal-hyoid joint. It provides shift left and right between the mandibles, spring around the epihyoid for the stylohyoid and ceratohyoid and structures below, support of the pharynx, which is the throat structures, including the larynx or voice box, esophagus, the food and water pipe, trachea, the windpipe, and the thyroid. And then strength at the lingual process, which is the origin of the tongue. It also provides spatial adaptability. So what that means is that tension in either the tongue or in any of the 11 paired muscles of the hyoid apparatus will dictate and alter the position, shape, movement, articulation, or not at any of its 6 joints. So you could imagine that there were like little rubber bands attaching along each surface of the hyoid, of each of the bones of the hyoid apparatus. And depending on the tension of each of those little rubber bands, you could change the location of the hyoid. You can look in that picture to the right. That hyoid, we can see when we're looking down at it, that right mandible is on the left side of the image and the left mandible is on the right side of the image. And so we can see in that image that the entire position of the hyoid apparatus is scooched over to the right side of the mandible. And our swing thing could be swinging such that the lingual process of the tongue could be pointing straight up at us. So can you see how, depending on which muscle or muscle group has tension on it, the position, even the shape, of what those stylohyoid arms or the ceratohyoids, are they wonky? Are they straight? Are they parallel to each other? Are they like Marty Feldman eyes going skew ball? Does it permit movement? Does it permit equal movement? So yeah, lots of activity.
Okay, we have some comments. First, Kathy says, it's a teeny tiny tensegrity model. Yes.
That is true.
I love that. Okay, and then Patty asks, how is the structure protected within? Is it embedded within other structures, or is it easily visible on dissection?
It's protected within. That it has all these muscle attachments to it, and you have to like really work. It's almost impossible to dissect out each of the insertions of each of the muscles which originated somewhere else, because of the multitude of these tiny little muscles that, of course, the tongue, that's super easy because it's a big fat long thing. You can get that one. And in another image, I'm going to show what's happening at the back part of the swing thing, that thyrohyoid bones that are going that way. It might be the next image. So the protection is not a word I would use. It's got muscular attachments to it, and that is what keeps it in place. But and then the articulation of the stylohyoid up into those ear canals, it's actually really hard to get it out. you know, at that tip top there. So there's a quite strong attachment there. And then in the next side, I'll show you what part, you know, that when I talk about the function, you'll be able to see what else is attached to it. So it's readily identifiable, but there's lots of flesh.
Okay, great. And then Amy's asked, can dysfunctional trauma in the hyoid cause arthritis in the TMJ?
Yes, it can. And I actually have 3 slides on that topic.
Great. So we'll cover that later. One more from Suzanne. So it's only useful to treat more than one muscle if there's tension because of more muscles that attach and that could move this apparatus.
So it's good job, Suzanne. Yeah, if we think microscopically about the hyoid apparatus, and later we'll talk about how we can assess whether it's in the, you know, a little wonky in the place, or if there's tension around it. There are activities you can do to relieve and release tension in the close muscles. The question is, why did they get that way? And what are the inputs that cause them to be that way? And the input could be in the right hind heel. It could be very far away. And so you want to take a whole horse perspective. Yes, there are things we can do to create relief and release in the close-in muscle structures that attempt to hold it where it is and enable it to do its job. But if we don't take a panoramic view and a wide angle view about what caused one or more of those muscles to have a little panic attack and get too tight, then it'll just go back to doing what it was doing. And it may do that anyway if we can't get to the root of the problem. But so it's kind of a both and everything else.
So Patty has a follow-up question. Is it easily accessible on palpation and easily manipulated?
A part of it is accessible, and I talk about that also later. Can you see?
Yeah.
I go like
let me do this.
Okay.
And then
so
like that.
This, here, put it up against my shirt. I'm trying to find something that's dark. Put it up against my phone. How about, where do I go? There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Let me turn it around. No, I'll go like that. So if the lips are up here, we can interact with this part. And you can feel it. And I wouldn't manipulate. What did you say? Manipulate? Manipulate is too strong of a word for what we can and should be present with it. We can, and palpate is also depends on whose fingers are doing the palpate. Some palpatey fingers are like really hard, and other palpatey fingers are like rubbing the little hairs on a. Do you guys have woolly caterpillars in South Africa? Those little caterpillars with little black belts in the middle. You know, some palpating fingers are, you know, playing with the hair on a woolly caterpillar. We want to start with the idea that you can kind of see how soft I'm being. So yes, we can palpate a piece of it and around it. And I think it's more, rather than say manipulate, I guess I would think more about, so I think about little men on winches going that are attached to muscles everywhere. And so what I think about is that the men who are like overactive in their winching need to like have a beer or something, you know, have an adult beverage and just relax. And so I think about being present to cause them, if anybody that's too tight should just relax so that they're not like causing the structure to go like this or like that, or, you know, something like that. So I hope that helps, Patty.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Another comment. We have lots of conversation. I love it. So Terry is just joining the discussion. Welcome, Terry. It's really great to have you. And I see we have a bunch of people that have joined us. So I just want to say welcome to everyone. Please, questions, comments, thoughts, share them at any point. How does all this affect chewing?
Well, significantly, because this, where am I? Here. The lingual process.
I'm trying to see if I can make you bigger here.
It's okay. I think everybody can see it.
Okay.
It's okay. So this is the lingual. I just keep getting weird between my lefts and my rights. This is the lingual process, and the tongue grabs on to that. And so, you know how active your tongue is. And so if let's just call them the inside the mouth short muscles of the hyoid are the tethers whose job is to keep the tongue balanced and centered and not too far with the lingual process up and not too far with it sucking back. And, and so it's sort of to orient it in space. And so we could imagine that if the whole thing, instead of being, well, I'll just do it. Instead of being flat in the mouth, it's twisted, because the guys over here, the little dudes on winches over here are winching for their lives, and they're pulling it to the left, then that's going to have an impact on the ability of the tongue to function. Now, horses and humans alike are masters of compensation. They're going to chew, they're going to swallow, and they're going to get their food down the chute, because that's what they need to do. But there can be issues. There can be issues with the wear of the teeth, particularly if there's something that's happening up at the tympanohyoid, where it's up in the temporal bone articulating. If that's wonky, or there's some non-articulation going, let's say this side is articulating and this side's not. Okay, that's going to have an impact. So there's they're going to chew, they're going to swallow, but it's possible that there could be an effect on how the tooth wear is going, but it can go both ways. I actually have a really, I don't know, it's funny. It's an image that talks about all the different inputs. Okay. That's coming later.
Okay, great. Then another comment from Julie. Julie, it's so great to have you join us. Thank you. And she's commenting on the bit and the bridle fit, and that, understanding all of this about the hyoid is so important in understanding the possibilities there, and it makes it quite challenging, right, to fit the bit properly.
Yes, that is true. And the little emoji you picked with the big eyeballs, I would have picked the one that sort of goes like this, where there's like one little.
That is my favorite emoji.
Half an eyeball peeking out. Yeah, it really is. More and more people are knowing about the existence of the hyoid, and I think not so many people understand the relevance and function, which is, more to come in a few minutes. It's massive, absolutely massive.
All right. I'm going to take that down. And then, hi from Florida. It's great to have you. I am going to let you carry on for a minute, because I think you're going to speak about dysfunction more, and that should speak to some of the rest of these questions. But if we don't, when we get to the dysfunction, I will ask some of these questions that have also come up. Okay. And hi from France. Cool.
All right. Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. So that image got a little messy. So there are some super long, direct muscle connections. Well, this one's short, to the occiput. You can see at the top where it says M occipitohyoid, and then there's a little arrow down to the green. That's the one where way back at the beginning, I told you that there's a connection between the stylohyoid and the occipital process, condyle, right there. So that's that first little green one. And then there is a muscle called the omohyoid. Omo means shoulder. So it connects from just underneath the shoulder all the way up to the same place, the lingual process, the same place the tongue attaches is where this omohyoid attaches. So those two muscles kind of fight over hanging on to the lingual process. Well, they don't fight. They get together. They hold hands. And then the sternohyoid, so from the tippity top of the sternum, the manubrium, there's a muscle that, actually two, that run up alongside each other and then connect to the body of the hyoid and the tongue. So we have this connection between the basihyoid, that horizontal piece, and then the lingual process that goes down and attaches to the tip of the sternum. And then there are two other muscles that run up that also, they sort of weave themselves together with the sternohyoid in that same location. And they run up and they grab onto, let me just come back. They grab onto those two that are sticking back, or my fingers, the two that stick like that, that stick back that way. So you can see that we have these super long muscles that connect to the thorax and underneath the arm, essentially. And in this image, you can see that I have got those little forks that pull back the omohyoid, because the omohyoid is actually over the top of the esophagus, our food pipe, and our windpipe. Then I just noted, I didn't go through the list, all those small muscles that are inside the mouth that kind of keep it where it belongs. I don't know why this got all wonky, but anyway. So those were direct connections, but there are indirectly, the hyoid apparatus connects to the entire horse, both dorsally and ventrally. So the dorsal map, and this happens both through muscle and through, smaller fascial structures. So if we think about the stylohyoid, that's the one that goes up and there's that little tiny muscle at the tippity top where it says the muscle occipitohyoid. So we go from the stylohyoid to the occiput, from the occiput to the nuchal and supraspinous ligaments, and then the muscles, I got a typo, the long muscles of the back. And then once we get there, we're connected to the flexor system of the rear leg via muscle chains and fascial connections. So that's our top root. And then we have a bottom or ventral root, and we go from the tongue, the lingual process, to that subscapular fascia via the omohyoid. And then we go, the blue line, we go along the abdominals, and then we get to the front of the hind leg, the extensor system. And so we have a direct connection between the tongue and the hind toes in the front, and the tongue and the heels in the back. And that also is true of the front legs. It just runs down the front legs. But that's not all, because we also have, from the basihyoid and those thyrohyoids, we get to the sternum. And from the sternum, we go to the pubis and pelvis via muscular and fascial connections. So, center of the universe.
It is insane to think that it's, those fascial chains are incredible. And to think that between the pole and that hind hoof, you have connections, both superficial and deep lines that are running between those points from the pole, it's amazing.
And what this doesn't cover is the viscera and organs and body systems and nerves, because that's all connected too. Stay tuned.
But just one moment, because some people have to leave us. That's okay. This is available as a recording. So if you guys are watching this as a recording, Please feel free to comment, share, ask your questions, and we'll come back and answer those. If you need to go and watch this later as a recording, it will be available on Facebook. So free content available to everyone. We're here to teach, learn together, grow together. Enjoy it, share it. Wherever you want to share it on Facebook, you're welcome to. All right, carry on, please.
So just to simplify, the tongue is directly muscularly connected with the sternum, thorax, and front limbs. It's also indirectly muscularly and fascially connected dorsally with the head, pole, neck, back, pelvis, and hind limbs, and ventrally with the thorax, front limbs, abdomen, pelvis, and hind limbs. And then beyond the scope of today, it's also directly connected with the nervous, respiratory, and circulatory systems, and indirectly with all other body systems.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Should we take a moment to answer some questions again?
Sure.
Okay, so there we go. So will issues with the hyoid affect a horse's ability to yawn?
It can. Hi, Marilyn. How are you? Yeah, certainly can.
Awesome. Okay. And then for Julie, who asked a question earlier about the bitting, she's actually a bit and bridle fitter, and she's constantly worried about the hyoid apparatus. So how do you have anything to share with her that would kind of help her with that, or should she just continue listening, specifically with the bit and bridle fitting?
You know, I don't know you, but I'm confident that you have sought training that teaches you about the anatomy of, you have different anatomic structures. You have the anatomy of the bit, the anatomy of the bridle, and then you have the anatomy of the head. And so I'm confident that you have gotten training to do that. Horses adapt. How do I say this? Check your rider's grip. Because you're probably doing a fabulous job. And I'm confident that when you spec out the bridle and the noseband and the bit, that you have it specced out correctly. That's before the other human or humans get involved. And they may or may not understand how to actually fit the bridle the way you have intended it to be fit, or the noseband the way you've intended it to be fit. And they might have club hands. So I guess if I push the pause button on your job as a bridler and fitter, I would escalate your communication and education opportunities with the client and help them to really check them out. Ask them to put the bridle on and watch them do it and see if there are any tips that you have for them. Watch them, how they close it. How do they have it adjusted? Help them understand, what the spacing is supposed to be, and why the cheek piece is on the hole that it's on, and why the throat latch is closed on the hole that it's on, and why the noseband is where it is, and how they should measure where that is. And then I would probably craft a method by which they can experience what it feels like to have a bit, perhaps on their arm, this part of their arm, or this part with the bony part, and feeling tension, so that you and holding on to the bit, and they have their swap it, holding on to the bit, and they're holding on to the range, so that they can feel what contact feels like, and then switch back and forth. So I think I'm super confident, even not knowing you, that you have the foundation to do a bang up job on bit and bridle fitting. It's that human element that's the challenge and opportunity for us.
Well, I think that was really great advice. I love that. And I think we should all trust ourselves a little bit more. while we're continuing to learn and grow, because that's always the goal. Julie asks, ridden horses who have constantly their tongue drawn back in the mouth cause of the bit, could it be more hard to work the thoracic sling or have the sternum move forward because of an initial tension by the tongue? I love that.
Hard to work with. They're definitely connected, and if you look back at those long muscles that attach to the sternum and to the sides of the thorax, once we get to the sternum, we all we got to do is slip underneath, and suddenly we're in the thoracic sling, and those the Omohyoid muscles that slide underneath the scapula. So there is a direct connection between what is happening with the hyoid apparatus and what is happening with the thorax, the sternum. So absolutely.
Okay. I moved your slides so that she could see. Okay. And then another one, and then we can carry on with the slides. As a harness racing enthusiast, oh, that's exciting. Or different. It horrifies me seeing how many use tongue ties. How much influence does this actually have? The horses still win races. That's always the problem, is they win.
Yeah, it is true. They still do win races, and they're masters of deception, and they have a survival need to not reveal their pain and discomfort because they're a herd and a prey animal. And they have such heart, don't they? They could kill us in a nanosecond. They could kill us. How much influence it actually has is massive. That doesn't mean that the influence is going to overcome the athleticism and the heart of the horse. If the horse is athletic and it's conditioned properly, and it happens to be a better athlete than the horses next door, then it's going to win. But that is a separate topic from what is happening internally to the horse.
I think that's good. Thank you. Right, I think those are the questions. I don't think I've missed anything, but I will go back and reread some of these as you go along and see that I haven't missed anything. Right.
Okay. So let's talk about what its function is. So it's the seat and the structural framework of the pharynx, larynx, trachea, thyroid, and it is the origin of the tongue. And I personally stumble on all those inks words. So the pharynx is really the crossroads between the airway and the digestive tracts. The esophagus connects the throat to the stomach. Trachea, it's that tube. It's almost like a vacuum hose in its structure. It actually has these little spiral like ring. And so like in a dissection, if you squeeze it, it's like squeezing a vacuum hose. So anyway, that's the trachea. And then the larynx is air passage and Voigt's box. And then the thyroid sits sort of slapped on top. And that is the producer of hormones to regulate the metabolic rate that controls heart, muscle, digestive function, brain development, bone maintenance, yada, 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 all that stuff. So, has one or more kind of important jobs. It is central to that left column of boxes, essential life functions. Hearing, balance, equilibrium, proprioception at the top. Drinking, breathing, vocalizing in that thyrohyoid area, those two guys that stick back like that. Through the tongue, chewing, swallowing, and metabolic regulation, where we just talked about the thyroid. And then over on the right, it impacts the biomechanics of movement. So we've got that muscle up at the top that connects to the top of the head. So it's involved in head flexion. It's involved in movement of the neck, back, lumbar, hindquarters, and hind limbs. It is responsible for the position and movement not responsible for, it's participating in the position and movement of the sternum and thorax. And it's also involved with the movement of the front limb, thorax, abdomen, pelvis, and hind limb. It is attached everywhere. If you have had the opportunity to go to a dissection with Sharon May Davis, or if you haven't, find the opportunity. She does something where at one point in her dissections where someone in the group puts a bit on top of the tongue, and another someone in the group is back at the hind limb, and the other someone at the hind limb doesn't get to see what the someone with the bit is doing. So the hind limb someone canters the leg. And the question is, can they feel it when the bit is applied to the tongue? In the deceased being dissected horse. And the answer is yes. The range of motion of the hind limb is impacted by pressure on the tongue. And you can feel it in a dead horse.
So Kathy says, yes, I've experienced this. It's amazing. And that, like you said, is in a dead horse. That's actually mind-blowing. And while we're on this slide, Marilyn is asking about hyoid dysfunction and the influence on breathing. So I think you've answered that question, but if you want to expand on it, that would be great.
Well, it just goes back to, this image right here. And, if there is muscle dysfunction, dudes on winches who are over winching, or a rider or equipment which is over flexing, such that the if you think about, like, if everybody like stiffen up their neck and pull their chin in towards your sternum and just feel what that means, really tighten the muscles of your neck. Okay. And now try to take a super deep breath through your nose. You can't. Horses only breathe through their nose. They cannot breathe through their mouth. So whatever the external cause, it could be internal. They could be freaking out and they could pull their head in. But to the extent there's any flexion or overflexion, the vacuum hose gets scrunched. And if the tension is being caused by internal muscularly or externally in terms of the motion of the head and the articulation of the occiput around the atlas, and it goes like this instead of being like that, then there's going to be an impact on breathing.
Okay, that's crazy. We have a whole bunch of questions, but Sherry, I just want to let you know, I think we should leave this one a little bit because Becky's going to speak about the techniques that we can use to release that. And I think if, a question that comes up for me, a lot of people saying that they've seen that at dissections recently, so just amazing. If with our bit, we have that kind of an influence on the movement of the horse throughout their body, is it not better for us to go bitless, to ride our horses bitless? Can we?
There was a study done on that, and you can have equally malicious. That's maybe not the right way to say it. There can be negative results, even from a bitless bridle.
Okay.
So just because we remove the bit, I mean, you can have lovely, massive, free movement with a properly fitted bridle, noseband, bit, and rider hands that are attached to a balanced, fit, athletic, soft, connected rider. Mm-hmm. But there are just lots of inflection points in there where things can go really bad. So the bitless bridle is not necessarily the solution.
Okay, cool. Mary says it's great to have a webinar at lunchtime in the UK. She would like to know how teeth balance influences the hyoid and vice versa. While we're on
Hey, Mary, great to, I don't see you, but I'm glad this is happening at lunchtime. It's been years since we've connected. So yeah, I think I would say it's an indirect, because, you know, one can influence the other. If we have a compromised hyoid apparatus structure somewhere, then that's going to play into how, you know, and if there's pain there, then they're going to use their mouth differently. You know, they just want to avoid the pain. They don't want to show it, but they want to avoid it. And so there could be mandibular balance issues that could be related to where the tympanohyoid is interacting with its seat up in the acoustic meatus, which is in the temporal bone. There, so and then vice versa, if you have, you know, wonky teeth with just the wrong, let's just call it the wrong angles, they're just wrong, let's just say they're wrong, then that's going to have a direct impact on the TMJ, and we're just going to get at dysfunction from down the top. You cannot have a conversation about the TMJ without having a conversation about the hyoid apparatus, and you can't have a conversation about the hyoid apparatus without having a conversation with the TMJ. You just can't. They're you know, like, you know, peanut butter and jam. They go together. So.
I love that. Becky, I just want to check in with you on time, right? Because we're almost at an hour. So if you're happy with time, then we carry on. If you're fine with time, okay, great. Then we just carry on.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
So how can we, this is the funny slide coming up. How can we recognize hyoid apparatus dysfunctions, and what are the types, signs, and symptoms? The next slide, I think, is the funny slide. So types of hyoid apparatus structure dysfunctions, there can be those that are frequent. Positional imbalance of the hyoid itself. It can be left, right, up, back, wonky, particularly relating to muscles that connect to the sternum, those long guys. You know, if those long guys are hypertense, then it's gonna be creating tension. And then then you've got this battle between the tongue on the front end and all the little short, small muscles, where are my hands? Small muscles inside between the mandibles and those long anchor dudes going. Then you can have sort of periodic or episodic. So impediments to proper function of those pharyngeal structures. So there can be, some episodic things, particularly if we talk about, maybe the horse is in hyperflexion. And so then they're having to, all those muscles inside are having to respond episodically to this external event that is occurring. Less common are fracture of hyoid bones, especially the stylohyoid or the ceratohyoid. Actually, well, I'll talk about it later. You could have injury or osteoarthritis at one or more of the joints, especially at that tippity top one, that top one, the tympanohyoid joint. So those are sort of the big categories. And then because of the many connections, that those two columns of boxes, the essential life functions over on the left, and then the body-wide system of connections, the biomechanics of movement, identifying the root cause of hyoid difficulties can be kind of complex. And here's my mess. It's a tangled web of dysfunction and issues, and it all hides in this soup called bad behavior. So I had a piece of paper and it was like coming such a mess. I tried to have some image that was actually one of those canned images that you can use to create this, and that didn't work. So I just made my own. And I slapped hyoid dysfunction in the center, and the dark brownish arrows coming out are what we can see. If the hyoid dysfunction is coming from inside to out, then you're going to have mastication issues. You're going to have TMJ issues. You're going to have postural issues. You're going to have locomotion and performance issues. You might have hearing, balance, and proprioception issues. You could have actual injury to the bones themselves, and you're going to have diaphragm issues. And then I said, well, for each one of those, well, then, like if I have respiratory issues, that's going to be a little orange arrow. That's going to create diaphragm issues. Diaphragm issues are going to run all the way around to the top and create postural issues around the outside to the right. If I have TMJ issues, I'm going to have mastication issues, but I'm also going to have gut issues, because if I'm not chewing right, then the food's not going in right. I'm going to have teeth issues. It's just a mess. We have direct and indirect issues, and they can kind of go both ways, but I decided not to have them going from all of those outer issues to in, because then it was a complete mess. But, I guess the point here is that it's not so simple as to say it's the hyoid, quote unquote. Well, right, but and what and why? So what are some of the observable signs in the horse that there might be stress at the hyoid? Here's just a few. There's like a parade, but here's a few. You could have hypertonicity, which means too much muscle tone of those muscles on the bottom of the neck: omohyoid, sternohyoid, the sternothyroid muscles. There are other ventral neck muscles due to chronic pulling back of the tongue. So if you see, that cascade of hypertonic muscles, then you might scratch your head and go, I wonder what's going on with the hyoid apparatus. If you, through whatever your work processes are, you identify there's pain at the TMJ, you got to know there's something going on also with the hyoid apparatus. Don't know which came first, but it's going to be involved. If you have pain at the pole or the horse's head shy, remember there's that little muscle that goes from the stylohyoid. It's called the occipitohyoid muscle, because it goes from the occiput to the hyoid, to that stylohyoid bone. So any reported, observable on your part, or reported horse that has pole issues or head shy issues, a horse that's head shaking. Now, this is not to say that all head shaking horses have hyoid problems, but it might be. It's something to think about. It could be the source of the issue. A horse that has difficulty breathing, chewing, or swallowing, those should be like, I wonder what's happening with the hyoid. Performance and postural complaints that might point to a hyoid issue: difficulty or unwillingness to be bridle, raising of the head, opening the mouth, or locking the jaw when ridden. Tongue interference with the bit, they're putting their tongue over the bit. Reduced stride, front or back. Reduced front limb abduction. Resistance to lateral work, both at the neck and and in the middle. Reduced range of motion of neck. A hollow backed stance. And then here's a short list out of many of observable restrictions if you're providing some sort of therapeutic care, bodywork care. Resistance or reduced request for movement and range of motion of when you're asking for the neck to bend sideways, lateral flexion of the cervicals. Difficulty with extension of head forward technique. So you're asking for the head to come this way, especially, some modalities offer to rest the head, and the horse is like, peace out, I'm not doing that. Scapular release techniques, especially if we think about down and back. So think about that omohyoid. If the omohyoid is hypertonic, then sliding your scapula back, creating greater tension on that long muscle between underneath the shoulder and the mouth, might be like, yeah, peace out, I'm not doing that either. That's too hard for me. So if you're asking for the limb to go down in the back and the horse stomps his foot down, it might not be about his scapula. It might be about the hyoid and the tongue. Reactive to assessments of the hyoid position and or contact with the muscle origin or insertion of those long muscle attachments. I'll talk to you about that later. So just a few things. And now someone was asking about arthritis, and it's got a big fat long, like word salad of letters here. The temporohyoid osteoarthropathy, or THO, that makes it simple. It's also known as middle ear disease. It's not that common, but it's not impossible and it's not uncommon. And it occurs in that little yellow circle zone. And it happens at the articulation of the temporal-hyoid joint between the hyoid apparatus and the skull. In that ear, there's a little bone that's the ear canal bone. And what happens is there's a proliferation of bone surrounding that joint, and it can become massive. I was trying to find a picture. I had a picture. It was shocking. Proliferation was like, I'm just going to go out and get in the mud and, and slap it on. It was like literally, where's the little hole? That big around on one side. It was shocking. The bone proliferation that occurred, but that bone was being laid down to prevent articulation in there. The cause of this is not understood. There have been some research. There's two possibilities. One is degenerative osteoarthritis, what we would typically think of at that temporal-hyoid joint. Another is infection or inflammation that spread from the inner ear or guttural pouch. And so it's diagnosable with expensive veterinary diagnostics. It can be seen. You can you might be able to see it radiographically, but you definitely can see it if they scope. And you just see that, instead of the you can see how, here, stick it right in front of my face. You can see how thin this is. When in an image, it would be much bigger around. And so, they can see it. The problem is it's built to be a swing thing. That's supposed to be swinging. So if there's no swing in one or the other side, then that creates massive problems because of the chewing, swallowing, and all of that action. Think about, you can see that thyrohyoid, the left thyrohyoid bone sticking back. It's kind of almost parallel to the stylohyoid. So look at the yellow circle, come down that long bone, and then there's that shorty little bone, and then there's the little bone that sticks back. Okay. So there's a muscle that goes from the sternum and attaches onto that. And then also remember that there's a muscle that goes from underneath the left shoulder and comes up to that little crossbar and the tongue. So now let's think about a horse galloping and that muscle that's attached between the bottom of the hyoid structure and the front limb. And it doesn't get to articulate at its swing spot up at the temporal bone. Massive problem. So one solution that the body could come up with is to break the stylohyoid bone, to break it right underneath that yellow circle. Sometimes that happens. It breaks. A surgical procedure is to disarticulate the stylohyoid from the ceratohyoid. And then the swinging can occur. That needs to occur at the base. So that's actually become, for those, it's not a huge number. I can't tell you the percentages, but it's actually, while it sounds icky, it's a quite functional solution to a dysfunctional problem. It's not okay when a hyoid apparatus can't move. There are two cranial nerves that run through the petrous, the temporal bone right there, where the underneath which the hyoid attaches. If we have THO, that kind of osteoarthritis, then you will likely have involvement, squishing, dysfunction of cranial nerve 7, which is the facial nerve, and responsible for movement of lips, ears, blinking of the eyelids, lids, or production of tears. So you might see some things that look weird to you about lip movement, ear movement, blinking, tears, lack of tears, ulcers in the eyes. It's none of those. It could possibly be the hyoid apparatus. So those would be things to look for. And again, this is not, it doesn't happen often, but this is one of those like scratch your head things. Like, why is your lips and ears and what's going on with that? It might be the hyoid apparatus. And then there's cranial nerve 8, which is another word salad of letters, the vestibulocochlear nerve. And that's responsible for helping the horse keep its balance, to walk in a straight line, and hold its head in a normal position. Mm-hmm. So you see any compromise to those, you might then scratch your head and go, well, that all sucks. But I wonder what's happening. Maybe let me just check the little box with my vet about the hyoid apparatus, and possibly let's just rule it out, because it's fairly straightforward to rule out this kind of arthritis. So effects, signs, and symptoms of THO, you're going to see decreased range of motion and flexibility at that joint. We can't see it, but it's the reality. Possible fracture. I said this already, either at the tympanohyoid or the stylohyoid. The signs can be weird, vague, variable. Pain, when pressure at the base of the ear or the throat latch, because of those structures that sit in the thyrohyoid bones. So if you were touching up here and the horse is getting away from you, that might be an indicator. If they're head tossing, reluctant to accept bits, their performance under saddle in specific head positions is wonky, or they lose their balance, or and then diagnostically, there's if there's significant thickening of the bones or a stress fracture has occurred, then you're going to see those neural responses, loss of coordinations, disturbance in equilibrium, lip and ear drooping, tilting of the head, difficulty swallowing. That nerve related to eye function can produce decreased ear tears. They can't blink as good. There can be corneal ulceration. I mean, so you might have a horse where you've got an ulcer on the cornea, and you treat the ulcer on the cornea, but the problem isn't that. That's like putting a bow tie on a dirty pig. You gotta look back further. And so this might be something to look into as one possibility if you have any of those kinds of symptoms. So then I'm going to give you a short list with some scary pictures of human causes of potential hyoid apparatus issues. So this picture's flipped for some reason. This picture is supposed to, I don't know why it did that. This picture is supposed to be going the other way. It's one of these. It's a hook. This is an upper tooth here. In the left picture, it's a similar picture to the right picture. It's where you have a hook. If the mandible can't move, then you're going to have a TMJ problem. You're going to have a shoulder problem and a pelvis problem. But anyway, closer in, you're going to have a TMJ problem. And if you have a TMJ problem, then you're going to have a potential hyoid issue. Fit and communication with the mouth is a major issue. And heavy hands, poorly fitted bridles, nose bands, or bits are going to negatively impact hyoid apparatus wellness. Aggressive training or riding is going to negatively affect hyoid apparatus and the wellness of that structure. It can happen in any discipline. So here's two short things you can do, safe methods to assess hyoid, whether there's hyoid imbalance. And so picturing this left side of the horse, if you face forward along the horse's head, and you, with your left hand, in this case, I'm doing an arrow, you can't even see it. If you were to clasp the noseband between what I refer to as the D ring at the cheek and the O ring underneath the chin. So clasp that, fingers, where's my hand? Fingers straight up like that. And then place your hand under the jaw between the left and right edges of the mandible. And so all you're going to do with your hand, I'll turn it this way. You're going to put your hand like this, and you're going to stick it here. Make me big again for a second.
Okay.
So if the horse's head is going, nose is that way. I'll turn it this way a little bit. You're just going to assess the space between this side and the inside of the mandible where the pterygoids are, the inside of the cheekbone, this side and this side, okay? Here. And so you just want to have, and you'll have your hand kind of like this. And so let's say that the mandible is here and you're just feeling how, so now you can go back to the presentation again. You're just measuring in finger widths. How many finger widths are there? You can do it on yourself. It's like, you can do it like this. Take your finger and point back toward your ear and then rest the top of your finger along the inside edge of your mandible. And you can feel that there's like tissue and you'll like bonk into it. And if you come forward a little bit, you can feel your voice box. Okay. So you just want to feel this side and this side. And however many fingers is normal for them. It might be 1 on each side. It might be 1.5 on each side. It might be 2 fingers on each side. You just want to say, swing, are you in the middle? And so you can just evaluate its middleness or not. You're not creating pressure. You're just sort of feeling where are you relative to where you should be. And this zone, this arrow is about where you'll go. It might be a little forward of that, but it's basically in that zone there. And so your fingers are going to face forward. You're going to use the top of your hand. And the question is, how many finger widths are there between the left edge and the left inner side of the mandible and the right edge and the right inner side of the right side of the mandible? It's super duper common that it's not equal, that one side might have 1 and the other 1 finger and the other side might have 1.5 or 2 fingers. And so our swing thing is like, it's just one side or the other. So that's one thing you can do, just to say, it's just kind of like, it's kind of a curiosity. You're like, oh, where are you hanging out? And that's the perspective that you should have when you ask. You're not like poking or prodding and pushing and no. You're just like, think about the woolly caterpillar. You're just feeling in there and saying, where are you hanging out? Another method of assessing hyoid imbalance is a little more, let's call it purposeful. So you're going to stand the same way, you're going to clasp the same way, and now you're going to take your hand like this, okay? You're going to take your hand like that. And so if I was holding the left side of the halter, and now I have my hand, which is alongside, it's right where that arrow is. I have my hand just like this, right where that arrow is. And so I'm going to take my fingers straight forward, and I have kind of a stiff hand like that. You're just going to, you can do it on yourself. You're going to just like that. You're going to, and you can feel like you can put your hand there. And now if you press up, does it hurt? Probably does. It does on me. Okay. So you're fine.
A bit more pressure.
Yeah. Okay. And so actually the amount of pressure on me, that's like uncomfortable. I can make it uncomfortable. And that's kind of what you do. You're not like, whoa, you're not jamming it up. You're just placing it and then having kind of a slight compression up to see what are you going to do. When I do it,
like right back there.
Yep. It might be a little more forward when you actually do it.
Okay.
Yep. It's going to work. Yep. And so you place your hand there first, and then I've said gently, but with intention, apply upward pressure so as to push your extended fingers slightly upward between those surfaces. And then you're like, what are you going to do? Now, safety. Okay. Holding between the D ring and the O ring, because that face might come at you to go, well, that's no fun. So your safety opportunity is holding between the D ring and the O ring. And if the face comes at you, usually it won't. Usually it'll go up or away. but it might, it could come this way, and you just straighten your elbow. Oh, where's my hand? You just, I can't see. You just straighten your elbow. And so like 100%, the safety hold is fingers up between the D-ring and the O-ring. You're holding gently, you're holding softly. You have zero down force on the noseband and the top of the halter. Zero. You have to hold your own arm up because you don't want to put pressure on the pole as you're asking a question. You want to ask one question. You don't want to ask a nose question, and you don't want to ask a pole question. So you got to hold your halter hand has to hold its own self up. And then you can ask the one question about what happens when I like press up a little bit. And you can do the offside from the near side at the same time. I often will not do that because if I put my finger to the offside and then I compress up and they want to go away from it, their face is coming at me. So I kind of don't like that. So I ask separate questions on either side personally, but up to you.
Okay.
So the positive response is an evasion. They'll raise their head. They might turn their head. They might try to leave, like, peace out, I'm leaving, backing up, stepping away, spinning away. And the magnitude of the response has to do with one part is their tension, and two part, are they a big communicator? It's possible to have dysfunction and poor communication. Some of them, this, they communicate like a 4x4 everywhere else. They're like, yeah, I'm good. And then you ask the body part to move and they're like, nah, we don't do that anymore. So it's possible to have reactions like that even in this area also, but typically not. Typically, if there's some sort of an issue, then you'll get a response. They'll do that. Was there about to be a question?
Yeah. So Kathy says that's really interesting and easy to feel on myself, more restricted on the right than the left. And it made her cough because she's had a cough recently. So just highlighting that connection again, right?
Yep. Thanks for sharing, Kathy.
And then Patty asks you to be a little bit more specific. So when you say it might be the hyoid apparatus, can you be specific about what that means? What changes, what goes wrong with the hyoid apparatus? And I think she asked that a little bit of time ago when you were on the slide and I missed the question.
That's okay. So what we can be confident of is that there's muscle overactivity. That's what we could be confident of, that my little dudes on winches, some number of the little dudes on winches are freaking out, and because of something, maybe it's a bit, maybe it's a rider, maybe it's a front leg problem. Maybe it ran from the left hoof all the way up the left and omohyoid, and it's coming from the hoof and going up, and you've got hypertonicity in the omohyoid that's showing up in the hyoid apparatus. And so, how it manifests is back to that list. That nasty web. In terms of the incidence of actual injury or catastrophic injury to the hyoid itself, I think that is actually quite low. I don't have any statistics or percentages, but I've been doing body work now for 11 years, and it's thousands of tongue interactions between my hand and the work. And I personally have not interacted with any horse that had an actually structurally damaged hyoid apparatus, to my knowledge. And so I think it's just looking back at the performance issues, the behaviors. I think more of it is around becoming aware that these performance challenges have another topic to be considered, that when you're short striding, it may have nothing to do with anything about the limb. It might be in their mouth. The issue might be in their mouth. When you have, a horse that doesn't, the whole barrel is rotated. I think of the barrel of the sternum. So picture a Viking ship and then the mermaid in front. Okay. The mermaid in front is the sternum and the ship is the whole thorax of the horse. So I think of a Viking ship, and what's the mermaid doing? Is the mermaid up? Is the mermaid back? Is the whole ship twisted in the water? Is it listing? Whatever that sternum and the position of the sternum is and the position of the thorax, that if it's wonky, if it's twisted to the right, and it's unbalanced, then I've got a big bend on my left side. My comfortable bend is this left bend. You ask me to bend to the right, I'm going to say, nope, no, thank you. I'm going to go around that lunging to the right, and my head's going to be left. My whole body's going to be bent to bananaed to the left. My feet are going to the right because you're making me do that, but I'm not bending to the right. Maybe it's the hyoid apparatus. So I think really the opportunity here is to just expand your perspective. It might confuse the heck out of you, but it has one more option to consider as possibly having an impact on whatever the performance complaint is, the behavioral complaint, the physiologic, maybe it's not a dysfunction. It's just like, is that horse lame? Like, God, he's short. Is it short striding? No, going this way. It's fine. Oh, look, there it is again on the right. Huh. It's just another structure, a super important structure to consider. Does that mean that it is the absolute source of any of those? No. Is it involved? Possibly. It's possibly, in my opinion, it is always involved. The degree of involvement, that's to be determined.
Okay.
So
Patty says, to clarify, the hyoid will simply be displaced in response to any of the other potential dysfunctions and issues. Not simply.
It'll depend. It's going to depend on, it's going to depend on the root. Even looking at this map here, it depends on what is the source, what is the primary issue, and then what is the path of least resistance for the tension to run along the fascial lines. It's going to go through the hyoid apparatus. I'm just telling you 100%. Whatever the issue is anywhere, it is going to run through the hyoid apparatus. Does that mean it's a massive issue and that's going to displace the hyoid apparatus from left to right? Maybe. That depends. That depends on a whole bunch of factors. So I think sort of myopically, we have an opportunity to go sort of inquisitively with our punch list of things that the owner, rider, trainer, driver, whatever says, this is all working well, but there's this thing, there's something over here. It's just one thing to be considered. So as you're doing your work and doing whatever the evaluation process is that you have for the type of work that you do, this is another opportunity to add something to the list. And it could be like the vortex. You could be like the stinking superhuman because you're like, oh, I figured it out. We've been trying to figure it out for 4 years and I figured it out. Or it could be like, well, that was interesting. And, that was not the straw on the camel's back, but we took that straw off. Okay. Anyway, at least I got rid of that one. So, the actual impact, that's for the practitioner to sort out, and the relevance or importance or, the weight of the issue. That's to sort out. As I said in this image here, it's a tangled web, which for those of us that like things to be black and white, either or, not that one. Okay, this has got to be like somebody on OCD might not be very happy. It's because, it's just not orderly.
Please, I want the answer.
It's not orderly. It's not organized. It's like playing pinball. You know, every time you play pinball, you pull the little thing back and you shoot it forward, and the ball doesn't go the exact same path ever. It skitters around, and then as it skitters, it might hit something twice. And so you're going to, like, you know, in the pinball, you know, if that little thing is at 250 points, you're like, oh, good. You know, but we don't know how it's going to skitter through.
So I'd love to add my thought on that. And maybe it won't be as organized, but just where my thinking is going is that it's not about there being one answer. It's not about there being, this is the problem. And it almost never is. Like, it is almost never that straightforward. Even if there is a diagnosis of hock arthritis, we know there's hock arthritis. Well, what is the hock arthritis caused by?
Exactly.
Changes in the kinetic chain throughout the body that have been chronically present for years, and now we have a diagnosis. But it isn't the primary problem, and it isn't the only problem. So it isn't
a result.
It's a result. So it isn't really about saying what we're seeing here is a result of this pathology or structure being dysfunctional, or whatever. It is always about the whole body and how it's functioning together in tensegrity or in unity. And I think, to me, that's what this is highlighting, and what the anatomy of the hyoid highlights in that connectedness within the whole body, is that you can't really look at it on its own. It's not one structure on its own. It's the entirety of the body that's impacted by that one structure. So whether the chicken or the egg comes first isn't relevant. It's that we need to treat both of them to move forward, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, and then Mary, we have a question from Mary, or a comment. The study on bitless showed that if affected, the front limbs in either flexion or extension. I can't remember which one. I'm going to go look for it, Mary. Thank you. All right, and Kathy says absolutely. So my comment or yours was helpful. I'm going to find our slide again. Hold on. I think we were way out here. Yes.
Yeah. So there are other assessments, but, you know, I don't know the audience. I don't know who can do what. So this is the short list. Two things that you can do safely. This is the one. This number 2 is the one where, you know, approach it. Approach it like you're going to ask like you're going to ask the same question here to your 85-year-old grandmother. Okay. Don't go in there like a stinking bulldozer. Go in there respectfully and hold between the D ring and the O ring, and you'll develop the feel for it and how, and it's not quick. It's brisk, but not speedy. Okay. It's like, think about when, you know, you were a kid and you went to the doctor and he took that little hammer and he thwacked your knee. Okay. He didn't like squeeze down and press, right? It's a question that you ask. And so you just ask it. And it's, and the actual movement, like, the movement goes like that. It's not a lot. Okay. So you're just compressing up. Okay. So then let's say that it's hanging off to one side or the other with your little how many fingers question. And then you can get 2 different answers. You can say, well, you're wonky, but when I asked you if it was uncomfortable, if I did that, you didn't say it was. Or it could be like, well, look at you. You're equal. Both sides. And now I ask the question and you're like, whoa, that's like, stop it. Okay. So you can get a mixed result in these 2 questions. It's just sort of an inquiry. If you get a positive answer to either one, then again, there are a number of things that can be done up in that area. But stand back, what we just were talking about, that you can release tension in any and all key accumulation zones, the pole atlas, the neck shoulder withers, the hind end and hind limbs, the whole top line. Anywhere that you release tension is going to have a positive impact on the hyoid apparatus. So I know we like to, be sort of A-type, purposeful, find the thing, find the scab, pick the scab, get rid of the scab, make it heal. It's all better. But it doesn't work that way. And even if you address yourself to imbalances that you identify or think you identify in the hyoid apparatus, if you only address that and you don't do anything else, guess what? That was a temporary Band-Aid. You didn't address or even consider what the other sources are. So the big takeaway message is here. I mean, I see the hyoid apparatus like a freeway interchange, and it wherever you're going, it passes through, and everywhere else on the body, it passes through. And Jim Masterson says, and I agree with him after thousands of horses, that when tension is released in any key junction, it's also released in muscles and connective tissue and the surrounding areas of that junction, but in more remote areas also. I mean, how often have you been working in one area in the front end of the horse and suddenly they're resting their hind leg? Or, it's all connected. So takeaway number one is just because you find something, doesn't mean that you found the key to the jewelry box. It just means that you found something. And the rest of the picture is an opportunity to address it. So that's message number one. Message number two is that we can mobilize hyoid muscles, structures, and the TMJ simply by being present with 2 fingers inside the bar. And that's a safe activity. Again, that hold, I don't happen to be doing it there with that horse. But I'm holding the off side between the D ring and the O ring. And you just, at the smile line, at the smile crease, you just pop your fingers right in your mouth. Like if your fingers are clean, pop your fingers in your mouth. No, right now, Anne.
I'm definitely not putting my fingers in my mouth.
Okay.
Sorry.
You don't do anything with your fingers. You don't massage. You don't do anything. You just right at the smile crease, you just pop them in. And you can see with this horse, I happen to be with Martina in Switzerland. Those are her clients. And so you can see in the beginning picture, look at the elevation of his lower lip compared to the top of my head in that before picture. And now I'm doing what I'm suggesting you can do. And so it's really a mobilization of all the muscle of the hyoid and the structure of the hyoid and the TMJ, because you create this annoyance of the presence of your finger on the mandible of the inside of the mouth. And so there you can see the second one is during, and then the third one is during, and now he's moving his mandible around. And then afterwards, look, his head's so nice and low, it's covering up my face.
Do you do it on a specific side?
Both sides.
Both sides, okay.
Both sides.
Cool.
So that's one option. And then another option is to interact with the origin or the insertion of a couple of those long muscles. And so this, with Jim's permission, I include the process that we use in the Masterson Method, which is, it's a 4-step process. We search for a response, and then we stay till we get a release. So responses are things like blinking, tissue to the muzzle, twitching, the facial, some little scrunch of the eye. There might be, a breath change. And so once you find that, then you stay. You just stop. You stop moving. You stay right there, and you stay and you stay and you stay and you stay longer, and you keep on staying and you stay. You just keep on staying. You do nothing but stay. Nothing. No massaging, no moving, no nothing. You just stay until the tissues of the target zone where you're working soften, resulting in a release and a reduction of tension, resulting in a release by the horse. The releases can be something like licking, chewing, snorting, sneezing, coughing, body shaking, some kind of thing that they do. And so where can we do that? The origin at the manubrium, you can search around there. And so, again, holding that halter is a good thing to do, because if there's hypertonicity or guardedness around that manubrium, some horses are like, they're very communicative about you being in that zone. And so your search contact zone might be an entire hand. So if I'm searching, it might be an entire hand, and it might be making contact. It might actually need to come away. It might need to be just the tips of a few fingers. It might need to be the tip of one finger. It might need to be the diameter of one fly toe on one hair. This is a conversation that you have with the horse. And the way we work with the Masterson method is in this dialogue. The game is, since they have horse has a survival need not to show their stuff, and that they're a prey animal and their first choice is to flee. The game is that when we're searching for, an area of tension or restriction, we need to be under their brace and flight response. And the way to do that is to modulate our presence with the surface area of the contact and the distance of the contact. And so, you can tell what the horse's behavior and body will tell you the amount of your presence and the distance of your presence. And then you get to just stay. So you can do that at the origin in that manubrium. You could even do it toward the front of the shoulder with the Omohyoid. And you can also do it underneath, between the mandible. But again, the question is, what's the surface area of your contact? I don't know. You got to ask the horse. I don't know. It's a conversation with the horse. Maybe it's like this. Maybe it's like this. Maybe it's like one little finger. Maybe it's down here, or they're going to kill you. Like I don't know. You just simply ask, and then you follow this process. You've searched. You found a response, they blinked, then you just stay. You stay until you experience a release. I didn't put on here if a person is trained in myofascial release, that's a degree of presence that could cross over with what we do in the Masterson method. But myofascial release, you contact the tissue and then you melt in. That may or may not be happening with what the Masterson process. So whatever what you're not doing is like playing with Play-Doh. You're not like, you're not massaging, you're not pushing, you're not like, you're not doing that. You're letting the tissues respond to your presence and letting the tissues soften and the little dudes on winches relax in the presence of your presence, because the presence of your presence is powerful. So you don't need to be pushing. You just need to be present. So those are my options. We've already been doing Q&A. There are other things you can do, but again, not knowing the audience and the training, I have a parade of, it was hard for me to get down. And obviously my 45 minutes, I blew right past that. So.
For sure. Okay, so I'm going to take those down and then we can chat. Guys, if there are any more questions, now's the moment. I only have one more. Becky, you've spoken about your little guys on winches.
Yep.
So hypertonicity on one side or the other side. Is hypotonicity as much of a problem? And how do we differentiate if it's hyper or hypo, and our guys on winches have just given up and are being lazy instead of being overactive?
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes together because, if one set of dudes is working too hard, either the other guys are going to get in a fight and try to do their part, or they're going to go, yeah, peace out, whatever, I'm drinking beer already. So that's having sort of educated hands and educated eyes to be able to visually, first of all, knowing the anatomic structures and what lives where and what runs where, and then being able to have an eye to go, well, you're looking kind of big. Meanwhile, you're looking kind of small. And when there's then just with practice and knowledge, you need to be able to discern, is the small normal or is the small extra small? You can often tell that by texture and tone. You can tell that by your eye, where you're like, well, that's a big old cavity. that's small and abnormal as opposed to small. So they're equally dysfunctional. Anybody who's not appropriately functional in their bounds, like when you're driving on a freeway, okay, let's say it's a 3-lane highway and we're in the middle lane. Well, like if you're going over the left, you're out of place. If you're going over the right, you're out of place. There's like boundaries, you need to be where the boundaries are. So ideally, you want to have tonal balance in the little rubber bands and the amount of tension being created by the little dudes on winches. And if so, you're going to have, I'm trying to make my hands balanced. You're going to
highlighting your own imbalance there a little bit.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my shoulders. It's probably not my hands. Yeah.
Coming from somewhere else, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So Mary Lynn says, this has been so informative. Do we plan to do more of these lives on different anatomical subjects? So Mary Lynn, my question to you is, do you specifically mean more with Becky? Because we do a lot of Facebook lives. So 2 answers to that question. Number 1, next week, we're going to be live with Martina Neidhart, and we're going to be speaking about podiatry, because no foot, no horse, and the other way around. And it's another one of those centers where you're like, oh, this could be the beginning and the end of everything. Influences everything. So we have Facebook Lives every week, not necessarily on this page, but where we tackle specific subjects, sometimes specific anatomical areas, like this week. If you want more of Becky, we can do that. But it will happen next year if Becky's interested and wants to do that. And then to kind of expand and add on to that, this is Online Pet Health. You guys are here with Online Pet Health. And if you're not familiar with us and who we are and what we do, we provide continuing education to veterinary rehabilitation therapists all around the world. And we say veterinary rehab therapists broadly because we all come from different backgrounds, we've learned in different ways, and we have different approaches to how we do things. But we all play a very vital role within the rehabilitation team and within the healthcare of the animals that we're working with and treating. So if you're interested in continuing to further your education, continuing to learn, we can never stop learning. That is actually our main kind of hashtag slogan, core value, never stop learning. If that's what you want to do, then you're in the right place right now. So yeah, just follow us, check what we're doing, see if you're interested. And if you want, you can join the membership. And if you don't want to join the membership, we have free content like this every week because we're here to help you learn, whether you can afford to be a member or not. And then the second answer to that question is, if you would like to have Becky back, just let me know. And I will speak to her and see if she wants to do that, and what other topics we can tackle. Those will only happen in the new year because we have our annual conference coming up on the 12th of November, the Vet Rehab Summit, where we're going to be focusing on leveling up. And we're really going to be looking at, although we all love the clinical questions, things like this, learning about this stuff, we do this every day. And we're continuing to learn on this front, the clinical front, every day. Our focus at the Vet Rehab Summit this year is more of a mental one, because that is what determines whether we're successful or not in our businesses and in our lives and with our patients. If we don't have the confidence to be present, if we don't have the confidence to share what we can do, if we feel that we're not good enough, if we don't know how to handle criticism and grow from criticism, those are the things that are going to stop us. If we don't know how to pursue our goals, let me just put my hand up there, because I have a goal that I've been wanting to reach for and do and achieve for the last 2 years, and I'm stuck. I can't do it. I'm not the only person, so I don't mind saying that to you guys. But if that's what you feel, then the Veterinary Hub Summit on the 12th of November is going to help you open those doors. So I'm really excited about it, because I really feel that those are the things that hold us back. Like you said earlier, Becky, it's not our training. We know what we're doing. We've learned, we understand. So let's target the other areas that are holding us back. All right, guys, thank you so much for all the feedback. So much positive feedback, Becky.
Thank you. I had a couple more slides just so that people know where to find me.
Okay. Adding it in.
Yeah. So I have other content around the hyoid, and I have other content coming. So you can send me an email to see what's coming. And then on the bottom of this page are also my email. And then if anybody's interested in learning more about the Masterson Method, that's there. And then my website. So just wanted to have those up.
Thank you so much, Becky. If you want to share these as text in the comments afterwards, you can, and then people can follow those links directly. If you
I don't know how to do the comments.
I will do it. I will do it. All right, guys, thank you so much for your engagement and for your feedback. I've loved chatting with all of you. I've loved chatting with you, Becky. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.